So thank you so much for joining us for this presentation today, this webinar. We are going to discuss strategies to improve exit exam participation and performance. Specifically, we're going to be talking today about summative assessments, which measure the intent to which learning outcomes have been met. We often use summative assessments to measure the program effectiveness, collect data for continuous improvement, and then also help to satisfy those accreditation requirements that you have. And then, given the importance of summative assessments, it is vital that we encourage students to give their best and most honest effort. Peregrine provides external summative assessments that help with learning outcomes management and measurement. And something we often hear our partners say is that they struggle to incentivize their exam. They say that their data is not a reflection of what they know students, the knowledge that students have gained is because they're not really trying on the assessment. So the following quote is from one of our clients. He said, our greatest struggle is our students are just clicking through our exams. You might be familiar with this. He feels like they have tried everything to incentivize the exam, different approaches, but they kept finding that students were not trying on the exit exam. So he said, how do you motivate students before exams? So this experience is not an isolated one. Often our higher education partners report they struggle to find a way to incentivize that end of program exam to get that good measure of student retained knowledge. And with that measure, that's how you're using the information to make decisions on your program. And so the issue is rooted mainly on what is referred to as senioritis, a common affliction with symptoms of decreased motivation as learners reach the end of their course or program. So, on the other hand, learners coming into the program are much more motivated to do well, right? They will take their time to carefully read each of those questions that are in the exam, give their thoughtful answers to those different questions. And this doesn't really help your institution get a good sense of how much students have learned during an academic program and is a poor reflection of student retained knowledge at the end of the program.
So let's begin this conversation by talking about motivation, since that is at its core what we're trying to influence. There are two main types of motivation, extrinsic and intrinsic. Extrinsic motivation is driven by external factors such as grades, recognition, or avoiding negative consequences. In education, this is a common motivator. Students often study hard for exams to earn good grades or to avoid failing. Most students are motivated to study hard and to earn a good grade or avoid that failing. According to research by Desi and Ryan, extrinsic motivators can be effective, especially when paired with clear, consistent rewards, but relying on only these external motivators can be very risky. Over time, students might only do the bare minimum to get by, especially if the reward loses its appeal. That's why it's essential to balance extrinsic motivators with intrinsic ones so students feel motivated in a more sustainable way. Intrinsic motivation comes from within. It's that natural curiosity, satisfaction, or challenge that drives someone to think, to do something for its own sake. Think about students maybe who are taking on extra projects just because they really enjoy learning or want to master a skill. In an academic setting, though, intrinsic motivation can be harder to cultivate, especially when it comes to exams, which aren't exactly seen as a fun thing to do. But if we can help students see the value in the assessment process and how it ties into their personal and professional goals, we can tap into that intrinsic motivation. To understand how to effectively balance motivation, we can look at self-determination theory, which suggests that intrinsic and extrinsic motivation are mutually exclusive. According to the self-determination theory, people are motivated when three core needs are met: autonomy, which is a sense of control over their actions; competence, which is the feeling of being capable and skilled; and relatedness, which is the connection to others or a sense of purpose. In the context of exam performance, these factors are very critical. Students are more likely to engage with exams when they feel confident in their knowledge, which is competence, and believe they have control over how they approach their studies and can connect their efforts to their personal or academic goals. By fostering this, institutions can create an environment where students are intrinsically motivated to succeed. Motivation is also influenced by external factors, which we call extrinsic motivation. When they're trying to balance both intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, it's helpful to consider three questions students often ask themselves. even if it's unconscious, before they commit to a task. First, is it worth it? This is where students evaluate whether the reward, like grades, recognition, or future opportunities, justify the effort that they're going to put in. Second, can I do it? Here, students consider whether they have the skills and resources they need to succeed. And finally, will it work? They're asking themselves if the effort they put in will actually lead to the desired outcome. These three questions shape how much effort for a student will invest. So if we want to create an environment that motivates our students, we need to address these questions by being clear about the purpose of the exams, offering support to help students build that necessary skill, and connecting exam success to the broader personal and professional goals. By doing this, we can help students see the value in taking the exam seriously and engaging with them in a meaningful way. Let's talk about take what we know about motivation and apply it to some general ways you address the three main questions. After the review of general ways, we will talk more specifically and provide you with practical examples of how these best practices can be implemented. First, we'll address the question, can I do it? And so this relates to self-efficacy, which is the belief in one's ability to complete a task or achieve a goal. To answer this question, consider whether your students have been provided with the information, the tools, and the training needed to succeed in the exam. Fostering a sense of preparedness can alleviate anxiety and boost student confidence, making them more likely to engage meaningfully with the assessment. At Peregrine, we offer a normed exam that isn't designed to be studied for in a traditional sense. Because it's normed, students might encounter questions on topics they haven't directly learned, which can sometimes make it feel like they aren't able to prepare. This is common with many external exams, and the purpose of our exam is to provide a snapshot of overall student performance, offering comparative reports and data to help schools benchmark results and identify areas where students might have knowledge gaps. While it may seem like there's no way to prepare, we found that students clearly understand the type of exam, its purpose, and what the process looks like. Their confidence increases significantly. Excuse me. To support this, we recommend providing students with timely, clear information about the exam well before they take it. A good practice is to include exam details in the program syllabus and introduce the concept early in the course or program so that students can start forming realistic expectations. Be explicit about when, where, and how the exam will be administered. The clearer you are, the less uncertainty students will face, which in turn will reduce anxiety. Additionally, using an inbound exam, which can be thought of as a pretest at the start of a program, can familiarize students with the types of questions they'll encounter at the end of their program, helping them to reduce exam-related stress over time. Also, we have found that when you encourage students to reflect on their performance from earlier assessments, it helps them recognize their progress and feel more capable when it comes time for the exit exam. As we communicate about the exam and what to expect, it's always important to explain the why behind the exam. Students really should understand that their performance contributes to the continuous improvement of the program. If there are stakes like a minimum score for graduation, ensure that students are aware of this early, and the score should be normed for fairness. Although exams may not require specific study preparation, it's beneficial to provide students with a clear outline of the topics that are going to be assessed. Additionally, creating a resource that gives students actionable feedback on their performance, such as a summary report, can add value. This report could highlight their strengths and areas for improvement, helping them to see how their performance in the exam connects to their future academic or career goals. This kind of feedback also provides a tangible benefit that students can reference as they move forward in their professional lives. One of the most effective ways to show students that the exam is worth their time is by linking it to their career or academic goals. Make it clear how their performance can help shape the future of the program and how they can use the results to develop academically or professionally. Include resources that can be added to their portfolio so that students leave with a clear demonstration of their knowledge and competencies, something they can present to future employees or graduate school. When students see the long-term benefits doing well in the exam, they are much more likely to invest in the process.
We're going to talk now specifically about some strategies that you can use in seeing those types of theories in practice. So Tying them to the capstone. Many of our institutions have found success by implementing the summative assessment into a course. So at the end of the program, that would typically be that capstone course that students are completing. By tying the exam to a final capstone grade. So, a common method for doing this, something that we've seen as the best practice for our recommendations for this, is to make the assessment worth 10% of the grade. But when you're using an external normed exam, a smart approach is to then split that 10% into two parts. So 5% for completion, for completing the exam, and then 5% based on that student performance. And then this way, students are incentivized to complete the exam, but they don't feel so much pressure that it negatively impacts their performance. So research on high stakes testing shows that too much pressure can cause anxiety and then also lower scores. So this approach really helps students to have some skin in the game, but then the focus shifts from simply getting a grade to actually engaging with the material and then demonstrating what they've learned. And then by giving students credit simply for completing the exam, you can ensure that they have some skin in the game while also focusing on the learning outcome rather than the grade. And then a practical way to help students feel prepared, just depending on the nature of the exam, is to provide them with the exam summary. This summary should clearly outline the topics that are being covered on the assessment. So, what areas of the program will the exam assess? And then, what is the exam format? So, is this going to be a multiple choice? Is this going to be an essay-based assessment? Will it be timed? What are those timed requirements? So just having a little bit more understanding about that format. And then also the purpose. So making sure that your students understand that the exam is just not a test on their individual performance, but also a way to assess the effectiveness of a program. And with this level of transparency, it reduces uncertainty. So students have clear expectations and then also helps them to approach the exam with a clearer mind. They're not having to go into this as a big mystery of, oh, this is a really important end of program exam, but I don't really know what it's going to be questioning on, which leads to better engagement with the assessment. When students know what to expect, they're more likely to put in the effort and perform better. So at Peregrine, if you use our assessment solution, we do provide you with this exam summary. It's going to have the information on those topics. It's going to also provide in-depth detail on those different subject areas that they're going to receive questions in, and then what does that relate to, and then 2 sample questions to give the students an idea of how those different questions are going to present for them. So we also need to help students understand that the exam is a way for them to gain insight into their own strengths and areas for improvement. So encourage them to not, of course, like I said, be a reflection of their own individual value, but as a tool for personal growth and then also program improvement. So I'm sure you're all familiar with sharing the importance of the assessment for quality in higher education and accreditation purposes. But when the student can relate that back to why this is important to them, they can kind of understand the full picture of what the purpose of this is. So by giving them different ideas for creating action plans based on their results, we can provide more value just beyond here is your score. They can start to interpret what that means for them. So, what can your institution do to offer students actionable feedback that will guide their future learning? So I mentioned earlier that it's a good idea to provide students with something they can use for their portfolio. An example of that would be providing students with personalized feedback or perhaps a report that highlights key areas where they excelled and then also key areas where they might have struggled, and then offer suggestions on how they can then strengthen these areas as they move forward in their careers or their studies. This turns the assessment from a simple pass fail measure to an opportunity for continuous growth and improvement. So at the completion of a Peregrine assessment, Peregrine provides learners with what we call a learner assessment report. So it does just what I was talking about. So it provides the learners with an understanding of their knowledge and performance against their peers. So they have that external evaluation as well. It's going to show them their relative strengths. It's going to show any learning opportunities they might have because it shows them the different types of errors they made when they were selecting the incorrect answer. So perhaps they made several calculation-based errors in accounting. That's something that they want to implement into their long-term goals as a career. And so that explains to them that they need some extra help in that particular area. The report also explains the why of the assessment so that they can understand that on a deeper level, to understand the purpose of the assessment. And then it's also going to provide them with graphs and other types of visuals to help them understand their score by having it explained in that way. Now, what we really appreciate about this report is that it shares the score and then the percentile ranking. So they can really understand what this means. So if a student who scores in the 75th percentile will know that although they got a 68% on the exam, they scored better than 75% of all learners who took the same exam in that particular aggregate group. So in the case of the learner assessment report, that aggregate is set to all students located inside the US, so a national average. And then what we've noticed is that students love to share their report and then those corresponding certificate on their LinkedIn page, and they will often tag us as a part of that post. So this is a great addition to a student portfolio as it breaks down how they scored in different areas, where their strengths are. If you are developing something like this for your students, it's going to highlight your institution specifically. That is listed on our client's learner assessment report. And so it's kind of providing that sharing of your university and maybe, the students being really proud of the program that they just completed because they understood their score and what that really meant when they took that assessment. Okay, so this brings us to another incentivization tool that you could perhaps utilize. So incentives don't have to just end with those grades. It is important to have those grades, but many institutions have found success in using certificates or badges or other forms of professional recognition as a motivator. So the digital badges, I'm sure you're very aware that they have gained popularity because they can be shared on platforms like LinkedIn. And then that gives the students a visual proof of their achievements. We have several of our partners who are in the process of investigating adding digital badges to their program, including badges awarded based on performance on the Peregrine assessment. So that's just another idea. Now, these badges can be added to their profile. So it's serving as motivation to take the assessment seriously, but then also give them, your students, that tangible outcome that they can then share with future employers. Okay, something else really, really important when it comes to incentivizing the exam is the ways that we are communicating. So as we said before, it's important to communicate to the students what they should be expecting with this. And then how and when you talk about the assessment is crucial. So one of the best ways to help students feel prepared is to introduce the exam early, weave it into the programs consistently so that they have that. So some examples of this is by putting it in the syllabus. So mention the exam in the syllabus. Everyone reads the syllabus, right? So if it's in there, they should expect to have it. But the syllabus for the courses that are key to the student's learning pathway, You can do this through your LMS, perhaps. So, using your LMS announcements and reminders, not just at the end of the program, but also during a course to remind students that the exam is a part of their learning journey. You could also incorporate these into advising sessions, and advisors can play a crucial role in framing the exam as a key milestone in the student's academic progress. So the advisors can really sit down with the learners one-on-one, help them to interpret that information and then understand that that's something that is going to be coming up, that's connecting it for them and explaining additionally the value of that they're going to receive. For introductory courses, you can also include discussions about the exam in the first courses that students are going to take. So when students anticipate the exam throughout their studies, it then becomes a part of their long-term goals, not something that is kind of sprung upon them at the end of the program to say, okay, now you're going to take this exam. This is very important. We need you to do your best. We're going to tie a grade to this, and it's very important that you do well on this. And they had never heard that this was something that was going to be a part of their program at the end. And then as we mentioned earlier, using an inbound exam, that's our term for a pre-assessment, an assessment that is administered at the start of a program, students become familiar with the structure, making the end of program exam feel less daunting for them. Familiarity breeds confidence, right? And also reduces test anxiety. So we've also seen this with institutions that implement our academic leveling modules that are used at the beginning of many graduate programs, and that provides graduate learners with foundational concepts they need for their graduate studies. And because these modules include a pre-test, post-test format, and that post-test is similar to the structure of the Peregrine assessment, students feel more equipped to take the end of the program or outbound exam. So when students have completed something already at the start of the program, you can talk to them throughout the program or during that capstone course to say, hey, you've already seen this. This is the same assessment that you completed when you started the program. This is just going to connect that information for you. You're going to be able to see that knowledge that you gained as you completed our program. So familiarity, right? So students should walk into the exam knowing exactly what to expect, exactly what it's for, and also why this matters. At Peregrine, we have a video that we share with our clients to provide to their students. It's a less than 2-minute long video that talks briefly about the exam, why it matters, what's in it for the student, including that learner assessment report so that they can understand what that is and the value that they're receiving. So even if you are using a rubric-based assessment in your program, you can create these resources to help level set your students or better prepare them. So perhaps your team develops a video similar to this, just explaining that. So students are receiving a consistent message within the program, consistent communication, regardless of maybe who is teaching that course that this is being presented in. Okay, so another strategy that we have learned about is to make the exam a progression requirement. And what this means is that students must complete an exam in order to move on to perhaps their capstone or their final course within the program. And something that you should think about is whether or not to communicate a specific cut score that is set by the institution, and then making the exam um, a necessary step in the program reinforces its importance. And this approach ensures that students see the exam as a meaningful part of their academic journey, not just something that is completed. Check, I've done this. So one effective way to ensure students take the exam seriously is to make it a formal requirement for progressing in that program. So students must complete the exam. And by integrating the exam into the academic roadmap for the students, you create a sense of accountability for the students and importance. Um, So the consideration to whether to create that specific cut score or to simply do this based on completion is something that you should think about. Some schools prefer to communicate that minimum score, while others focus on just completion alone. And if you choose to communicate a cut score, it's important to provide students with those clear expectations, if necessary, options for remediation if they don't meet that threshold. And this strategy has benefits for both the student and the institution. So students are more likely to engage in the exam and take it seriously because it's going to have an impact on their academic progression. It reduces procrastination for the students, as students know that they need to complete this before moving forward. So it's something that they need to get done. And then for the institution, requiring the exam provides more consistent data or program evaluation as every student is giving their best effort. And this approach ensures that the exam is more than just that box to check. It becomes a critical component of that learning process and academic success. Okay, so what have we found that doesn't work? So we've had a lot of different conversations with our partners. We've seen a lot of different ways that assessments have been incentivized, presented to the students, placed in the program. And so some of the things that we have consistently seen not work for that, some of these approaches tend to backfire. So bribing students with gift cards or by making completion the only requirement for a grade doesn't encourage a meaningful engagement. So I had one client who said, we give every student that completes this a Chick-fil-A gift card. But what they were finding is that these students were completing the assessment in less than 10 minutes and they were all getting their Chick-fil-A gift card. So it's a great idea and concept, but when you actually implement it in that way, students end up really just saying, okay, I just need to get this done. I'm going to click through all of those different answers so that I can complete my assessment, say that I did it. It didn't have a grade or points tied to it. All I needed to do was complete that. And then also over incentivizing the assessment. So if you're saying you have to get this score or else blank, whatever that would be, students end up having anxiety about this. Am I going to be able to know all these answers? And when we're getting this data for the summative assessment, you're wanting to use this for your program to contribute to the decisions that you're going to make. And so if a student is getting all of the answers right, of course, theoretically, it sounds great to say, oh my gosh, we are doing amazing. Our students know everything. They're doing so good. They have all the answers. We don't need to make any changes in our program. Yep, we're great. That doesn't give you the information that you need to then dig into your program to make those small changes that end up having big positive impact on your students' results. So over incentivizing, putting too much pressure on that doesn't create a good experience for the students to complete that assessment either. So avoid those. Well, hopefully that information was helpful for you as you are considering how you're going to best incentivize the assessment. We hope that everyone has a wonderful end to your week, and please feel free to connect with us if you need anything at all.
Thank you.